Dear Journal, I destroy Xeno furniture and doors. After the fight, if you could call it that, I thought I wouldn't live too long. After all, these blue giraffes had a spaceship. It didn't matter that I was physically stronger than them even in my weakened state, which was quickly receding. Any minute they were going to burst through the door with death rays and vaporize my physically superior body. My real punishment was far worse. It started out innocently enough. Dink entered my room, moving rather timidly, pushing a massive bucket of water on a cart. Remembering how I hadn't gotten the opportunity to get a drink while I was in the hydroponics bay, I thought Dink might have been bringing me a peace offering, or at least a distraction to ensure my attention was diverted as Severus came at me with a ray gun. With these thoughts in mind, I was completely unprepared for when he stopped the cart right next to my bed, pressed a button on the cart's handle, which promptly dumped the entire bucket of cold water over my head. "What the f-?" I spluttered through the water in my mouth. I choked down my words when Dink came up with what was unmistakably a scrubber and ran at me with it. I wasn't paralysed anymore though. I jumped from the bed, sailed 5 meters over and another meter up, landed on all fours, and then played a decidedly one-sided game of tag with Dink, who was chasing me like an old woman with a broom after a mouse. It was so easy to keep away from him I had ample time to think. I did need a bath. I would have preferred one which was warmer, but I'm not that picky when my hair is so oily that it looks like it's wet. I wasn't going to let some blue giraffe wash me though. It wasn't that hard to get the brush away from Dink. I let him get close to me, then dived at an oblique angle behind him and to the right of him, snatching the brush as I shot past. He looked so dejected, watching me, his hand outstretched as though he still held the brush, looking at me with the eyes of one who knows he has no chance. He poked up again the moment I started doing his job for him, furiously scrubbing my oil-encrusted skin. He flail-galloped out of the room, and in short order returned with an even larger tub of water, this time being transported on what appeared to be a hover dolly, capable of lifting some of the smaller storage crates from one of the cargo bays. I got in, clothes and all. They needed a washing as much as I did. I didn't feel like stripping down in front of Dink. I know he thought I was an animal, but it still didn't feel right. Thinking about my clothes, my thoughts abruptly aligned upon an idea. I tore off my shirt and looked at the tag. I cursed my bad luck as I realised it was one of my favourite shirts, one I'd had since the beginning of college 7 years ago. It was just a plain white athletic shirt without any writing on it, although it had turned a rather disgusting shade of off-white during its uses as an exercise shirt, and even more so during my recent bath hiatus. It had been washed so many times the ink on the tag had faded to a few smudges, which looked like ash. How convenient. My pants were a pair of black basketball shorts. I think I had gone to the bar after a run. The tag from that had been cut completely off, as well as the tag from my compression shorts, due to the discomfort they had afforded me while running. Even more convenient. I looked up at Dink and realised he was staring wide-eyed at me with my shirt off. What? You actually thought that was part of my skin? Even after how it didn't move with me like the skin on my face and arms? Are you really that thick? He flail-galloped out of the room, and I was left alone to give myself a proper cleaning. I gave him a bath, and guess what? V-Tiv shouted excitedly, bursting into Cargo Bay 3 where Tshirt was checking several containers of vaccinations bound for the nearest Aurora planet. The inhabitants had had a recent outbreak of the disfiguring disease, which only affected their kind. The vaccines had to be stored in temperatures below -4 degrees Celsius, or else the weakened viral strains would be too potent to be administered as a safe vaccine. They were probably the most vital cargo on board, and every day Tshirt ensured the seals upon the containers were in working order. Carefully storing her diagnostic scanner, Tshirt braced herself for even more revolting or shocking news about their newest crew member. V-Tiv, speaking as fast as his little mouth could, squeak-clicked. At first he wouldn't let me get close to him with the brush, but then he grabbed it out of my hands. He's so fast. And then he started cleaning himself for me, and then do you know what he did next? Tshirt assumed he was about to tell her. She didn't have to wait long. Then he took off his outer skin. Then he just kind of looked at it and then seemed to be upset about something, but he took off his skin. Tshirt breathed a sigh of relief. She had feared Kukutura had just demonstrated his ability to detach and regrow a limb, or spit poison, or some other impossibility. This time it was merely Vitiv's ignorance. You don't need to worry about that, dear. Many creatures on countless worlds create artificial coverings for their skin if they aren't heavily furred. Nearly every wild animal on Hector 5 wears leaves stuck together with a glue they naturally excrete from their bodies in order to protect them from their sun's harmfully high amounts of radiation, and the silk molds of Seti Free weave and wear a natural fabric so fine it's considered better than all but the highest quality of synthetic polymers we are able to create. This creature's outer covering is neither outlandish nor especially unique, although it is looking rather worn, as I'm suspecting it hasn't managed to find the materials it used to make its clothes anywhere in space. Oh, Vitiv sighed dejectedly, deflating. He seemed to take every incredible characteristic Kukutuka demonstrated to be somehow reflective upon his own ability to care for him. Zook was just happy the creature hadn't developed a taste for metal. There is one thing I think we can do for him. Your father was right when he said Kukutura has a predatory glare. I wouldn't be surprised if his primary staple where he lived was meat. Vitiv looked disgusted at the thought of eating another creature's flesh, and Zook had to agree with him. But it wasn't as though Kukutura was a hunter, a vicious, carnivorous, and sapient race of beings who ate the flesh of other sapients. Whatever he was, Kukutura was wonderfully domesticated. Perhaps he had once been some eccentric's pet before. It's okay, dear. Plenty of good animals eat meat, it's only the hunters who have taken it too far. But it's a perfectly viable mode of sustenance in the wild, I bet, an extremely rare one. I can't think of a planet below a level 12 which has more than a few carnivores on it. We should just be thankful Kukutura appears to be an omnivore, or else he probably wouldn't be alive at this point. Vitiv looked up, confused. An omnivore? An omnivore. An animal that's able to eat almost any organic substance. They're even more rare than carnivores since they are usually exposed to both plant-bound and flesh-bound microbes, and usually don't manage to survive very long. I'd hazard a guess that our Kukutura's immune system is rather strong. This compliment about Kukutura's abilities brightened Vitiv's mood significantly, which had been Zerg's intention. Our sensors picked up a Tormix merchant cruiser that will cross our path in an hour. Their ships are some of the most highly advanced trade ships around and so carry some of the largest selections. You've earned a good deal of credits helping us loading and unloading the cargo this past year. When we dock with them to see if they're willing to trade, you could go aboard and see if they have any dizzy rats. They breed the moment you feed them and they don't eat much, but their meat is good for other carnivorous pets, and they're used all over the galaxy for that purpose, so I don't see why Kukutura wouldn't like them. Presented with a mission and implied permission to go aboard another ship without supervision, Vitiv almost fell over in his excitement, spewing his thanks and assurance that he would find the best dizzy rats there were, and wouldn't be taken for a bad deal. Just don't bring Kukutura with you when you go on the ship. I don't want him thinking you're in danger and attacking someone when you were merely haggling. Okay, don't worry. I'll lock him in his room. And with that, Vitiv ran from Cargo Bay free. It had taken me nearly an hour to get all the Kate oil off my body and out of my clothes without soap, but I felt remarkably better. I had just finished putting on my now clean clothes when Dink flew into my room in his usual manner, flailing his legs and arms with reckless abandon. He started clicking away excitedly and kept at it for a whole minute without taking a breath. Then he flew out of the room again. I had no idea what to make of his antics, but my curiosity was replaced with horror when the sound of an airtight seal emanated from the closed door. I ran to the door and tested the handle. It wouldn't turn. I hopped, gripping it, then braced my feet against the doorframe and pulled. With a screech of fracturing metal, the handle broke off in my hand, throwing me halfway across the room when it no longer provided counter-resistance to the pushing of my legs. I guess they don't make their doorknobs out of the strongest stuff. I threw my shoulder against the door, but apparently their thrift only applied to the door handles, and the door, held tight by its air seal, didn't even rattle as I flew into it. I took a moment to consider why I was scared that they had locked the door. Perhaps they had sealed the door and were about to leak all the atmosphere out of the room. I didn't know if they could do that, but I figured there was only one reason for such a tight lock on the door. If they had wanted to kill me, I don't know what would have been wrong with the ray gun option, but maybe they thought this a better way of doing it. In the end, though, it boiled down to the fact that I wasn't just some dog they could lock into a room, so I wouldn't pee on the carpet while they were gone. I was willing to be condescended to if the other option was death, but I'd already been locked into a cage once by aliens, and I wasn't going to let it happen again. I wouldn't be able to knock down the door with brute force. It had been sealed through air pressure, which meant I had however many pounds per square inch of air pressing against it from the other side. No matter how strong I was, there was no way I was stronger than physics. The only way I'd get through the door was by breaking the seal, i.e., breaking the door itself. I'd need something harder and stronger than my bones to get through it. My eyes alighted upon the tub filled with water in the middle of the room. Now that I looked at it, it looked like it was one of the smaller cargo crates, just without its lid. It looked heavier than I could lift, but so had Severus's leg, and look how easily that had given. I had to dump out half the water before I could reasonably lift and give a good momentum to the crate. Then I walked about a metre from the door and threw the water-filled crate at it like a boulder. It slammed into the door like a battering ram, and the door frame itself shook, but held. I repeated the process, and on the third such hit, the door buckled in on itself, coming off its frame. One more smash with the now empty crate sent the door clean off its hinges, and I hopped happily back into the rest of the ship, reveling my newfound freedom. I looked around. Dink stood in the corridor to my left, a box of what appeared to be round purple rats lying on the ground where he had dropped it. I looked to my right where the mangled door and equally damaged storage crate lay. I shrugged. I don't like cages.